Hi, everyone. We are back today with another rum review. And this time we are going to go with an independent bottler for a rum out of Nicaragua. Uh, I think just to kind of like segue off to the side here for a bit, I think everybody knows Mark Rainier by now. The word has gone out that the Renegade Distillery in Grenada has gone kind of not so much belly up, but it's looking for a buyer. They've had production costs that were too high, and they just couldn't make it work. And even though their cane juice work that they had done was really quite impressive, to my mind at any rate, it seems like they couldn't finish the job and actually make it to the next level. So now they're looking for a buyer. But Mark Renier was probably known for his ownership of Bruichladdich back in the day, but also for the original Renegade line of rums. And of course, Renegade was these frosty bottles that had these little minimalist labels that told you a little bit about that. And they had this concept back in, I think, between 2010 and 2012, when they issued their 12 or 13 editions of what they called additional cask evolution. And cask evolution just meant that they would finish it in some kind of wine cask after aging it for X amount of years. And they did stuff from, Jamaica and Barbados and Guyana and what have you. However, this is not from Renegade. This rum was made by Mark Rainier and his team when out of Bruichladdich, and they called it it was the Murray McDavid line. And Murray McDavid essentially, to me, was a proving ground for the concepts that would eventually lead to the Renegade independent bottlings of 2010 to 2012, and then 10 years later to the establishment of the Renegade Distillery in Grenada. It was one of the first independent bottlings that we saw out west. I bought it. It was interesting. Chip Dixter from the Rum Howler blog, he and I traded some bottles, and this was one of them. But I just want to make a few points here. First of all, nice presentation. It comes in this metal sleeve, and this is the actual bottle. Everything that is on the label of the bottle is also on the sleeve, and it gives you pretty much most of the information that you want to know. First of all, it's bottled at 46%. It comes from Nicaragua, from the Compañía de Licorería de Nicaragua, and it was aged in bourbon and white wine casks, apparently, which is interesting. I didn't know about the white wine part about it. But then it was enhanced, usually for about 3 to 6 months. I'm not quite sure how much in this case, in Quart de Chaume Chemin Blanc wine casks. So there you go. But this is exactly the same sort of additional cask evolution that they did in the Renegade line further down the road, where they made it a central feature of their entire program. And Mark always did tell me that he was really quite dissatisfied with wood management that was, that for the barrels that he managed to get, and he wanted to do it one step better. Whether he failed or whether he succeeded is another question entirely. Now, the rum is 4 to 6%. As far as I'm aware, it was unchilled filtered. It was unadded to, it was bottled under the Murray McDavid line. And the real question is, how does it rate against the Flor de Caña rums that we are much more familiar with? Because this, of course, is long since gone. Finding one of these is like, forget it, right? So, all right. Now, it does have nice nose to it. It is redolent of honey. There's a little bit of plastic there, sweet molasses, pears, a bit of light fruits. There's a bit of pineapple in there, some leather, some smoke, and so on. Nothing to write home about, to be perfectly honest. Although, to be equally honest, I really couldn't tell you that it is better or worse than a Flor de Caña of equal age. This is 10 years old. It was made in 1990. It was distilled in 1995, wasn't it? Yes, distilled in 1995, bottled in 2006. So how does it rate against the Flor de Caña 10 or 12-year-old? I would have to say this is probably a bit better, largely because it's 46% and the flavors pop just a little bit more and the nose is a little bit more assertive, right? Yeah, it's also got a slight bit of a musty and sugar water taste nose to it, which I quite like. To taste, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. It's a rum. I mean, there's no two ways about that. It has that molasses background to it. It has a little bit of green grapes. There's a light and sparkly note to it, as well as the honey and the darker fruits, like cherries, apples, very ripe pineapples, that kind of thing. But there is a little bit of wininess to it, which is probably imparted by the Chemin Blanc casks that they did their additional cask evolution in. Does that make it better or worse? It's hard to say. I quite liked it, actually, although at the time when I tasted it and wrote about it, I think around 2011 or thereabouts, I think I scored it about 82 points. No, it's better than that now. Which just goes to show I've changed not the rum, right? Because I've kept it sealed in nitrogen ever since I tasted the initial bottling and then shared out what I had to share. It is a decent rum in and of itself. It's more use. I think it's probably better for me to put it into the Romaniac section rather than pretend that this is a brand new review, because there's certainly no way outside of an auction that you're ever going to see this again. There weren't that many. There was only 1,500 bottles that this one ever made, and most of the line of whether it was Renegade or Murray McDavid Independence hewed to that line. They never had more than about 2,000 bottles ever, right? A couple more, a couple less, whatever, But given that this was made so long ago, I mean, 16, 17 years ago, it's very unlikely that they still exist. They weren't special enough to excite serious attention, but they were interesting, and it remains interesting. Because, again, we see what rums were like back then. Now, in 1996, Flor de Caña put in a new 3-column still that allowed them to get the coveted ISO 9002 certification. But this was made in 1995, so that predated all of that. So, again, you're seeing a window into the past of the way CLDN was making rums back in the day. And from that basis alone, as well as the fact that it does have some decent light tastes, I mean, it's a Spanish-style rum, if you will, I can't say there's any reason for you to stay away from it. It's pretty decent rum, Now, these days, I would probably score this at about 84, maybe 85 points. It's good enough for that. It really is a nice rum. And if you ever manage to get it, I would strongly recommend you give it a try, as long as it doesn't break the bank. I mean, it's not really worth $200 if you can find it, unless you factor in auction fees and costs and transportation or whatever. But it is a nice rum. It does not squeak Nicaragua. That's the one thing you have to keep in mind. If you're looking for something that says the terroir of the country, this isn't going to be it. I think you'd probably be better off sticking with Flor de Caña on this one. But as a rum by itself, it works absolutely fine. And I think I'm going to stop my review there, finish this glass, and have a very quiet evening. I hope you found this useful. If you ever find a bottle, let me know what you thought of it. And if you have any comments to make about Flor de Caña that I haven't already made somewhere else, by all means, let me know what you think. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.